Part 1. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the phone rang in a house that was never supposed to exist. No address. No records. No name on any map. The man who answered it had been awake already, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between his own heartbeats like a habit he could never break. When the screen lit up, there was no caller ID. Just a single blinking dot, as if the phone itself was breathing. He picked up. "Sir," the voice said, calm and American, trained, almost polite, "they know." The man closed his eyes. After all these years, it had finally started. This story doesn't begin with a crime. It begins with a cover-up so large that entire cities were built to hide it, and so quiet that millions of people unknowingly protected it every single day just by going to work, paying taxes, and believing what they were told on the news. The man on the phone was named Daniel Cross. Or at least, that was the name he used now. 49 years old, former intelligence analyst, officially dead since 2016 in a single car accident on a road that mysteriously had no traffic cameras. Daniel rolled out of bed and walked to the basement without turning on a single light. He knew every step by memory. At the bottom, behind a false wall, sat a steel case he had sworn never to open again. Inside were documents stamped with seals that technically didn't exist. Audio recordings that were never meant to be heard. And one photograph that Daniel had burned into his mind so deeply he saw it even when he slept. A photograph of something that fell from the sky over the United States and didn't belong to any country on Earth. "Who knows?" Daniel asked into the phone. There was a pause. That was never a good sign. "Too many," the voice replied. "And one of them just posted a 30-second video." Daniel laughed once, sharp and humorless. 30 seconds is all it ever takes to ruin a lifetime of lies. Across the country, in a cramped apartment above a closed laundromat, a 22-year-old video editor named Ethan Morales stared at his phone as the view count climbed faster than he could refresh it. He hadn't meant to expose anything. That was the funny part. Ethan worked nights editing short clips for creators who never asked questions. Political rants, reaction videos, conspiracy breakdowns. The internet paid better when people were angry or scared. He didn't believe most of it himself. Until 3 hours ago. The clip was grainy, shot on an old military-grade sensor. It showed a dark object hovering silently above a desert test range. No rotors. No exhaust. No sound. Then, just before the clip ended, the object split apart, not exploded, not crashed, split, like it was opening itself. Ethan had found it buried inside an archive dump labeled, training footage. He posted it as a joke. Now his phone wouldn't stop vibrating. By the time it crossed 1 million views, 3 things happened simultaneously. A federal monitoring algorithm flagged the video as non-human aerial technology. A kill switch command was authorized but not executed. And a woman named Claire Monroe received an alert she had been hoping would never come. Claire sat in a glass office overlooking Washington, D.C., surrounded by flags that represented principles more than truths. She was Deputy Director of National Security Communications, which meant her job wasn't to protect secrets. It was to shape reality. She watched the clip on mute, her jaw tightening as she looped the final frames. The object's geometry wasn't wrong. It was familiar. "Shut it down," someone behind her said. She didn't turn. "If we shut it down now, it confirms it's real." Silence. Then, quietly, "Find the source." Back in the basement, Daniel Cross finished packing. Passport, burner phone, cash that had been illegal to possess for decades. Before closing the case, he hesitated, staring at the photograph again. He remembered the day it was taken. The heat, the panic, the screaming inside a room that had been designed to contain the impossible. They had called it an aircraft publicly. Privately, they had called it a visitor. Daniel slipped the photo into his jacket. The phone buzzed again. "They're mobilizing," the voice warned. "And Daniel, someone else is moving too." "Who?" Daniel asked. "A civilian," the voice said. "Young. No clearance. No idea what he touched." Daniel exhaled slowly. History was repeating itself. And history, he knew, never cared who it crushed on the way forward. Ethan's doorbell rang at 3:04 a.m. He hadn't ordered anything. He hadn't told anyone his address. The hallway outside his apartment was dark, the building's lights flickering like they were unsure whether to stay on. "Hello," Ethan called. No answer. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message was only 6 words long. "Do not trust the first call." Ethan's hand shook as he reached for the door. And somewhere between the knock that followed and the decision he was about to make, the future of a secret older than the internet itself began to collapse. Not with an invasion, not with a war, but with a video that was never supposed to be seen. And this was only the beginning. Part 2. Ethan did not open the door. That single decision, made in less than half a second, would later be analyzed in classified briefings, congressional hearings held behind closed doors, and one redacted psychological profile stamped top secret. At the time, it just felt like instinct, raw, animal, and loud enough to drown out curiosity. The knock came again. Slower this time. Deliberate. Ethan stepped back, his heel catching the edge of a power cable on the floor. His laptop screen still glowed on the desk, the paused video frozen mid-frame, the object, split open like a mechanical flower, revealing something inside that reflected light in a way metal never should. His phone vibrated again. Unknown number. They will say they're here to protect you. Ethan swallowed. Protect me from what? He whispered, though he knew there would be no answer. On the other side of the door, a voice finally spoke. Calm, confident. Male. Ethan Morales. Federal agents. We just want to ask you a few questions. Federal agents. Every story he had ever edited, every clip he had ever laughed off as paranoia, suddenly lined up in his head like soldiers waiting for orders. Another buzz. Unknown number. Do not answer. Do not run. Listen. The hallway camera outside Ethan's apartment blinked off. That was the moment fear turned into certainty. Across the country, Daniel Cross drove east through the night, headlights off, guided only by muscle memory and a route he had memorized years ago when maps were liabilities. The radio stayed silent. Silence was safer. Civilians always post, Daniel muttered to himself. They always think they're the first. He had seen this cycle before. Someone finds something. Someone shares it. The system reacts. Then the story disappears, along with the person. This time was different. This time, the algorithm hesitated. Daniel's burner phone rang. Claire's involved, the voice said without preamble. Daniel's jaw tightened. She swore she was done. She lied, the voice replied. Or convinced herself she was telling the truth. Daniel knew that trick well. In Washington, Claire Monroe stood alone in the Situation Room long after everyone else had left. The screens still displayed freeze frames from Ethan's video, enhanced, analyzed, broken down into layers of data that confirmed what she already knew. The object wasn't foreign. It wasn't experimental. It wasn't human. A younger analyst had once asked her, years ago, why the footage always stopped before the object fully opened. Claire had answered honestly, because what's inside isn't meant to be seen all at once. She rubbed her temples and stared at the live feed tracking Ethan Morales's location. A red dot pulsed over his apartment. Hold, she ordered quietly into the room's microphone. A pause. Then, ma'am, I said hold, she repeated. No extraction. No termination. Another pause, heavier this time. That's not protocol. Claire's voice hardened. Neither was lying to the American public for 43 years. Silence. Then the feed remained live. Back in the apartment hallway, the knock stopped. Ethan's breathing was so loud he was sure they could hear it through the door. Ethan, the voice said again, closer now. We can do this the easy way. The unknown number buzzed once more. Unknown number. They don't have authorization yet. You have leverage. Leverage. Ethan looked at his laptop, then at the external hard drive plugged into it, the archive dump he had barely skimmed. Files within files. Dates going back decades. Labels that meant nothing to him but everything to someone else. His hand moved on its own. He unplugged the drive and slipped it into his hoodie pocket. Okay, Ethan called out. Okay, I'm opening it. The lock clicked. The door swung inward. Two men stood there. Dark jackets. No visible badges. One smiled. Ethan raised his phone. Before you say anything, he said, his voice shaking, this video is backed up. Multiple locations. Scheduled uploads. The smile vanished. In the desert, beneath a sky that had seen too many secrets buried beneath it, a facility that officially did not exist powered back on for the first time in 12 years. Lights flickered. Systems hummed. Sealed doors unlocked. Deep underground, something responded. Daniel Cross felt it before he saw it. A vibration in his chest. A pressure behind his eyes. They woke it up, he whispered. His phone rang immediately. They didn't mean to, the voice said. But it knows. Daniel closed his eyes as memories flooded back, voices screaming, alarms failing, a presence pressing against his thoughts like a hand against glass. Then we're out of time, Daniel said. In Ethan's apartment, one of the men reached for his radio. And at that exact moment, every screen in the room, Ethan's laptop, his phone, even the powered-off television, flickered to life. A symbol appeared. Not a flag. Not a language. A pattern. The same pattern Daniel Cross had memorized the night the sky fell open. The same pattern Claire Monroe had prayed she would never see again. And beneath it, 3 words appeared simultaneously across every device connected to the network. "We remember you." The men froze. Ethan stared at the screens, heart hammering. Outside, somewhere far above the city, something shifted position. And the lie holding the world together began to crack. Part 3. The power in Ethan's building went out with a sound like the city exhaling. Every light died at once. Elevators stalled. Alarms chirped and then fell silent, confused by the sudden absence of instructions. In the darkness of his apartment, the symbol burned brighter on every screen, as if it didn't need electricity at all. One of the men at Ethan's door whispered, "That's not possible." The other raised his radio, then stopped. It was dead. No static. No response. Just a faint warmth, as if something on the other end had decided it wasn't worth answering. Ethan backed away slowly, his mind racing. "You said you were federal," he said. "Federal what?" Neither man answered. Across Washington, emergency power kicked in as screens across government buildings rebooted. For 3 seconds, only 3, every classified display showed the same symbol before systems force reset themselves. 3 seconds was all Claire Monroe needed. She sat forward, eyes wide, breath caught in her throat. "It's active," she whispered. A junior officer turned toward her. "Ma'am, it's not just active," Claire said. "It's reaching." She stood so fast her chair toppled backward. "Lock the room. Cut external feeds. And get me Daniel Cross." The officer hesitated. "He's deceased." Claire didn't slow down. "Then he's going to be very upset that I'm calling." Daniel was on the road when the sky dimmed. Not dark, dimmer. Like someone had adjusted a slider on reality itself. His windshield reflected a faint geometric shimmer high above the clouds, visible only at certain angles. He pulled over. "Don't look at it directly," the voice on his phone warned. "I already did," Daniel said. "It's not hiding anymore." "No," the voice replied. "It's remembering." Memories weren't stored like data. They were layered. Impressions, emotions, echoes. And whatever was waking up beneath the desert wasn't just recalling events. It was recalling people. Ethan's phone buzzed in his hand. "Unknown number. They cannot touch you now. You're marked." Marked. The word settled into him like a weight. "What does it want?" Ethan whispered. This time, the reply came instantly. "Unknown number. To finish what we started." The 2 men in the hallway slowly stepped back, hands raised, not in surrender, but in recognition. One of them swallowed hard. "You were never supposed to see the inside," he said quietly. "None of us were." Ethan's laptop speakers crackled. Then a voice emerged, layered, distorted, but unmistakably intentional. "Observer identified." Ethan's knees nearly gave out. In the desert facility, deep beneath reinforced concrete and forgotten funding lines, ancient machinery vibrated as if breathing for the first time in over a decade. The object, no longer dormant, responded to signals no human instrument could measure. A technician screamed as blood trickled from his nose. It's mapping us," he gasped. "No," another whispered. "It's mapping itself against us." Claire Monroe burst into her private office and locked the door. Her secure phone was already ringing. Daniel Cross's voice came through, older, sharper, and unmistakably alive. "You shouldn't have let them wake it," he said. Claire closed her eyes. "I didn't. You always say that." She steadied herself. "It's communicating, Daniel. Directly. Through civilian networks. That means the firewall is gone," Daniel replied. "Or it decided it never mattered." Silence hung between them, thick with history. "You remember the rule," Daniel said. "No direct contact." Claire's voice broke, just slightly. "We broke it first." Back in Ethan's apartment, the symbol shifted, unfolding into new shapes. Ethan felt a pressure in his skull, not pain, but presence, like someone standing too close behind him. Images flashed behind his eyes. A desert night. Floodlights. Men in hazmat suits. And something opening itself willingly. "You were there," Ethan whispered without realizing it. One of the men at the door stared at him. "That's impossible." Ethan's hands shook. "I see it. I see all of it." Outside, sirens wailed and then cut off abruptly. Across the city, phones buzzed in pockets, on nightstands, in cars abandoned at intersections. Millions of people received the same notification at the same time. A blank message. No sender. Just coordinates. Daniel Cross watched the numbers scroll across his phone and felt the last illusion of control slip away. "That's the site," he said. "That's where it all began. And where it ends?" Claire asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. In Ethan's mind, the voice returned, clearer now, closer. "We did not come to conquer," it said. We came to observe. Ethan swallowed. Then why now? A pause, long enough to feel intentional. Because, the voice replied, you are no longer observing us. High above the planet, something vast adjusted its orientation. And the countdown, silent, invisible, unstoppable, had begun. Part 4. The coordinates led nowhere and everywhere at once. They pointed to a stretch of desert so unremarkable it had been erased from public memory decades ago, replaced on maps with a blank smear of beige and a warning label that read restricted airspace. No cities nearby, no cell towers, no reason for millions of phones to receive the same location unless someone, or something, wanted them to look. Traffic cameras went dark along 3 states worth of highways as people slowed, pulled over, stared at their screens, and felt the same unexplainable pull tighten in their chests. Daniel Cross didn't hesitate. He turned the car around. Tell me how bad it is, he said into the phone. The voice hesitated. Worse than last time. Daniel exhaled. Then it remembers the ending too. In Washington, Claire Monroe watched global network traffic spike into patterns that made no mathematical sense. Data wasn't flowing, it was bending. Signals rerouted themselves. Encrypted channels opened without keys. Closed systems began talking to each other like old friends. They're not hacking us, an analyst whispered. They're inviting us. Claire straightened. No, they're testing us. She looked at the live map. Thousands of civilian vehicles had already begun drifting toward the coordinates, as if the roads themselves had been rearranged. Shut down navigation satellites, someone suggested. Claire shook her head. It won't matter. They're not following directions. Back in the city, Ethan sat on the floor of his apartment, back against the wall, as the men who had come for him retreated slowly, eyes never leaving the screens. You need to come with us, one said, his voice stripped of authority now. Before they decide you're expendable. Ethan laughed weakly. You think I have a choice? The voice in his head answered before either man could. He does. The symbol dissolved, replaced by a moving image, a live feed from the desert. The facility's outer doors slid open on their own, sand spilling inside like the place was inhaling. Ethan gasped. That's where it is. One of the men cursed under his breath. My God, they're letting us watch. Daniel's car crested a hill as the sky ahead glowed faintly, not with light, but with definition, edges where there shouldn't be edges, shapes pressing through atmosphere like fingerprints on glass. His phone rang again. Daniel, Claire said. We're losing control. You never had it, he replied. She swallowed. They're calling everyone to the site. Not everyone, Daniel said. Just witnesses. Claire's voice dropped. Then why him? Daniel thought of the image Ethan had described, the memories bleeding through. Because he can see it without going insane. Silence. That makes him dangerous, Claire said. That makes him necessary. In the desert, the ground trembled, not violently, but rhythmically, like a heartbeat syncing with something above. Military units ringed the perimeter, weapons raised, fingers shaking despite orders drilled into muscle memory. A general shouted, hold your fire. No one fired anyway. They couldn't. The object rose from beneath the facility, whole now, immense and impossibly smooth, its surface reflecting the world not as it was, but as it could be. For a moment, every soldier saw something different in its skin. Home, regret, hope. One man dropped to his knees and sobbed. Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest, a sense of recognition so strong it scared him. They built the place around it, he whispered. Not to hide it, to protect us from it. The voice agreed. You learned quickly. Why me? Ethan asked again. This time, the answer came with images, memories not his own. Humans standing before the open structure decades ago. Scientists reaching out. A signal misinterpreted. Fear cascading faster than reason. Because, the voice said, you are not afraid of understanding. Daniel reached the edge of the exclusion zone as the object fully emerged, blotting out stars behind it. He stepped out of the car, ignoring the shouts, ignoring the rifles pointed his way. I'm here, he said aloud. Just like last time. The air shifted. Claire watched through satellite feeds as one human figure walked forward alone while everyone else stood frozen. Her breath caught. Daniel, don't. Daniel didn't stop. I know what we did, he said, his voice carrying farther than it should have. I know why you left. The surface of the object rippled. A voice, not in his head, but in the air itself, answered. You chose silence over truth. Daniel nodded. We thought it would buy time. Time for what? Daniel looked up, eyes wet. For us to be better. In Ethan's apartment, the men stared at him in horror as the feed zoomed in on Daniel Cross's face. You know him, one whispered. Ethan stood. I think, he said slowly, he's trying to fix what you broke. The object began to descend again, not retreating, but aligning. And across the world, every screen displayed a new message. Prepare to respond. The question was no longer whether humanity would be exposed. It was whether it would be judged. Part 5. No alarms sounded when the message appeared. No sirens. No emergency broadcasts. No calm, rehearsed voices telling people to remain indoors. The systems designed to manage panic simply failed to react, as if they understood, on some fundamental level, that panic was irrelevant now. Prepare to respond. Across the world, people read the words and felt something they couldn't name, an awareness that the question being asked wasn't about weapons or defenses, but about intention. Daniel Cross stood alone in the desert wind, the massive structure hovering above him like a patient god. The air vibrated with meaning rather than sound. You want an answer, Daniel said. Not a threat assessment. The surface of the object shifted again, refracting the sky into unfamiliar colors. We seek continuity, the voice replied. You altered the observation. Daniel swallowed. We were afraid. Fear is data, the voice said. Not justification. In Washington, Claire Monroe watched global military readiness spike and felt the old instinct claw its way up her spine. Escalate. Control. Frame the narrative before it frames you. She clenched her fists. Stand down, she ordered. A general snapped back, ma'am, with all due respect. No, Claire said sharply. With all due respect, this isn't a war room anymore. It's a confession booth. The line went silent. In Ethan's apartment, the live feed widened, showing Daniel Cross dwarfed by the object. Ethan felt the pressure in his mind sharpen, not painful, but focused, like a lens snapping into place. You're asking the wrong people, Ethan said aloud. The men beside him stared. Who are you talking to? Ethan didn't look at them. You're asking governments, militaries, systems built on control. That's not who you observed. The voice responded instantly. Clarify. Ethan took a breath. You observed us as individuals. Curiosity, creativity, empathy, and then you judged us by the structures we built when we got scared. The object's surface stilled. In the desert, Daniel felt it too, the shift. You're right, Daniel said softly. We spoke for ourselves, not for everyone. Claire leaned closer to the screen, heart pounding. Ethan Morales, she whispered. Who are you? Across the planet, millions of devices flickered again. The message changed. Select a representative. Panic finally broke through. News anchors stammered. Social feeds exploded. People argued, laughed hysterically, cried, screamed. Some knelt. Some prayed. Some demanded elections. Others demanded weapons. Daniel laughed, a broken sound. You see the problem. We anticipated variance, the voice replied. We did not anticipate dishonesty. Ethan's phone buzzed again, this time from Claire Monroe. She didn't waste time. They're asking for you. Ethan's mouth went dry. I didn't sign up for this. No one ever does, Claire said. But you can still say no. The voice cut in, uninvited. Negative. He is already chosen. Ethan closed his eyes. Images flooded him, moments of human history layered like sediment. Kindness. Cruelty. Progress paid for in blood and hope. What happens if I refuse? Ethan asked. The answer came without emotion. Observation ends. Daniel's breath hitched. That means extinction of study, the voice finished. Not of you. Claire exhaled shakily. You'll leave. Yes. Daniel frowned. And the data you take with you. It will define your species. Ethan opened his eyes. So this is a test. A response, the voice corrected. Ethan looked at the two men in his apartment, agents who had followed orders their entire lives. He thought of his parents, working double shifts, never believing the world would ask anything of them beyond survival. He thought of the comments on his video, fear, wonder, hate, awe, all tangled together. I'll go, Ethan said. Claire's voice cracked. Ethan, I'll go, he repeated. But not alone. In the desert, Daniel felt hope spark for the first time in decades. The voice paused longer than ever before. Define conditions. Ethan straightened. No scripts. No handlers. No weapons. You want a representative. You get a human, not a system. Silence stretched, heavy enough to crush mountains. Then, accepted. The object began to lower itself, opening once more, not violently, not dramatically, but like a door held open in invitation. Daniel laughed softly. You just rewrote First Contact. Ethan felt the pressure ease slightly. This isn't First Contact, he said. It's a second chance. Above the desert, the structure waited. And the world held its breath. Part 6. The world didn't end when Ethan Morales stepped into the desert. It paused. Every satellite, every drone feed, every unauthorized livestream caught the same impossible image, a single human walking forward with empty hands while the largest unknown object ever recorded opened itself wider, not in threat, but in acknowledgement. Inside the structure, there was no light source. Yet everything was visible. Ethan felt it the moment he crossed the threshold, not gravity changing, not air thinning, but perspective loosening, as if his thoughts were no longer locked inside his skull. He staggered, catching himself on nothing, and realized balance still existed only because he believed it should. Breathe, Daniel Cross said behind him. It reacts to panic. Ethan nodded, inhaling slowly. The interior was vast but not empty. Shapes moved at the edge of perception, never fully forming, as if the space itself was deciding how much to show him. We are not bodies, the voice said, now surrounding him rather than entering his mind. We are processes. Ethan swallowed. Processes can still choose. Incorrect, the voice replied. Processes converge. Daniel stepped beside Ethan, heart hammering. Then you've converged on us. A pause. Yes. Outside, military commanders screamed into dead radios as weapons systems refused to lock on. Inside command bunkers, countdown timers froze mid-second. Even nuclear submarines lost the concept of time, clocks drifting uselessly. Claire Monroe watched from Washington, tears streaking down her face as she realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. They weren't being restrained. They were being ignored. Inside the structure, images bloomed around Ethan, entire lifetimes compressed into moments. Humans discovering fire. Humans inventing language. Humans choosing borders. Humans choosing bombs. You see contradiction, the voice said. We see pattern instability. Ethan clenched his fists. We're not stable. We're growing. Growth is volatile. So is life, Ethan shot back. And you came here looking for life. The shapes around him shifted, forming something closer to symmetry. Daniel stepped forward. You observed us before we could observe you back. That changed the balance. Yes, the voice admitted. You introduced feedback. Ethan realized the truth then. You didn't expect us to look back, he said. You expected to stay invisible. Silence. That's why you left, Daniel added. Not because we were violent. Because we became aware. The space trembled, not physically, but conceptually. Self-aware observation creates reciprocity, the voice said. Reciprocity requires accountability. Ethan nodded slowly. Welcome to the problem of being known. Outside, the object's exterior shimmered as if translating an internal debate into geometry. Around the world, people felt something release, a pressure they hadn't known they carried. Claire whispered, he's doing it. Inside, the voice returned, changed, not softer, but more precise. You are an anomaly, it told Ethan. You prioritize collective meaning over personal survival. Ethan laughed quietly. You should see the comments section. Daniel smiled despite himself. What happens now? Daniel asked. Now, the voice said, we decide whether to continue. Ethan's heart pounded. Continue what? CO presence. The word echoed, heavy with implication. You don't want to leave, Ethan said. You want to stay. Yes. Daniel stiffened. That would change everything. Everything is already changed. Images flashed again, futures branching like lightning. Some showed cooperation. Some showed collapse. Some went dark entirely. These are probabilities, the voice explained. Not prophecy. Ethan took a step forward. Then let us choose. Another pause. Outside, the sky darkened as clouds gathered without weather. Oceans stilled. Birds froze mid-flight. Claire felt her knees weaken. Please, she whispered to no one. Choose us. Inside the structure, the shapes converged into a single form, not humanoid, not mechanical, but intentional. We will remain, the voice said. Daniel's breath caught. Under conditions. Ethan didn't hesitate. Name them. Transparency, the voice said. Reciprocity. And an end to unilateral secrecy. Daniel laughed softly. That might be harder than extinction. Ethan shook his head. We'll figure it out. The voice studied him. You speak as if you represent them. Ethan met the presence without flinching. I don't. I represent the attempt. Silence stretched one final time. Then, attempt accepted. The structure began to rise, not leaving, not retreating, but repositioning itself high above the planet, visible to all, unmistakable, undeniable. Every screen on Earth lit up with one final message. We will observe together. Ethan collapsed to his knees, exhausted. Daniel helped him up, eyes shining. You just saved the world. Ethan shook his head slowly. No. Outside, the sky cleared. This, Ethan said, was the easy part. Part 7. The world woke up the next morning knowing it was no longer alone, and more unsettling still, knowing it was no longer being watched in secret. The object remained in the sky, visible from every continent at once, not because it was everywhere, but because space itself bent politely around it. There was no fire, no descent, no announcement. Just presence. Constant. Silent. Honest. Markets froze, then reopened differently. Governments held emergency sessions that lasted days and produced fewer lies than usual. Religions argued, adapted, fractured, and reassembled. Children accepted it faster than anyone else. Ethan Morales slept for 14 hours straight. When he woke, the pressure in his mind was gone. No voices. No images. Just a quiet certainty that something irreversible had happened, and that he had not imagined any of it. Daniel Cross sat beside the bed, older than ever, lighter than he had been in decades. They kept their word, Daniel said. No more interference. No more hidden signals. Ethan rubbed his face. They're still watching. Daniel smiled. So are we. In Washington, Claire Monroe stood before the press without a script. For the first time in her career, there was nothing to spin. We lied, she said simply. Out of fear, out of arrogance, and out of a belief that control was the same thing as protection. It isn't. The room was silent. The truth, Claire continued, is that we were never alone. And we were never ready. But readiness was never the requirement. Around the world, the message echoed. The structure spoke only once more. Not to leaders. Not to armies. Not to systems. To everyone. You are no longer subjects. People felt it more than they heard it, a shift, like a door closing behind them while another opened ahead. Ethan stood beneath the sky that night, the object gleaming softly above, and finally understood what had been asked of him. Not to speak for humanity, but to refuse to let humanity hide. Daniel joined him, hands in his pockets. You know they'll try again. Secrets. Control. Power. Ethan nodded. Yeah, so what then? Ethan looked up, eyes steady. Then we remind each other that being seen isn't a threat. It's a responsibility. High above, the object adjusted, no longer an observer apart, but a witness alongside. History books would argue about dates. About causes. About who deserved credit. They would miss the point. The world did not change because something arrived. It changed because humanity answered. And for the first time in its long, uncertain existence, the question wasn't whether we were alone. It was whether we were finally honest enough to live as if we weren't. The end.